In C++, classes can have friends. Friends do not belong to the class itself, but it can access members of a class. A class can have its private and protected members accessible to friend functions and friend classes. Maybe a function or a class will need to work with a different class and have access to its protected members. However, for those protected members, we don't want to make them public and expose them to everywhere. So in this case, we would make those functions or classes a friend of the class with the protected members. A friend function can access private members of a class directly. The friend function can be part of another class, or it can just be a function independent of any objects. So here, our draw function is not a member of any classes. It is just a normal function. And since it's a normal function, we just call it normally, like with any other function. So let's say we've defined a class called fraction, and normally when we're writing fractions in math, it will look something like this when we're doing addition. So say that we want to have math functions available, but if we make a multiply function a member function of the fraction class, it'll look really weird to try to pass in a second fraction. It looks a little bit better to make just a standard multiply function that isn't part of any classes, but takes in two fractions to operate on, but it's still not as nice as just using the multiplication sign. If we're creating an external function to multiply two fractions, we would then also have to create getters and setters for numerators and denominators. So instead of having to write these getters and setters, we could instead make the multiply function a friend of the fraction class so that multiply can access the numerators and denominators directly. So within the fraction class itself, we declare our multiply function. It's just a standard function declaration, except it's going to go inside of the class and be marked as a friend. Then outside of the class, we define the function. Note that it is not a member of the fraction class, it is just a normal function outside of any classes. Now we can use the multiply function in main. But once we get into operator overloading, we can do this instead. So using friends is the first step towards being able to overload our math operations in order to make our code a little bit cleaner. Besides just functions, we can make one class the friend of another class. The friend class has access to the other's private members and protected members, but not vice versa. Friend classes are a little tricky. Things to keep in mind are that friendships will go one way, so if Class A is a friend of Class B, that doesn't automatically mean that Class B is a friend of Class A. And the friendships are not transitive, so if Class A is a friend of Class B, and B is a friend of C, that does not mean that C is a friend of A. Also, friendships are not inherited. A child class does not inherit its parents' friends. But access due to friendship is inherited, so if the class email is a friend of attachment, then email can access attachment's members, including members inherited by its children through the children. In the lecture on operator overloading, we'll go over some actual in-code examples of how to utilize friends.